welcome to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We're two physical therapists living the life in Las Vegas. I'm Dr. Erica.
And I'm Dr. Joe. We created this podcast for two reasons. First, to connect the healthcare, wellness, and fitness communities in Las Vegas. And second, to highlight all the amazing people we've met along the way.
Thank you for listening, and remember to take care of yourself.
Today's guest is Mountain Evan Chang. He is the founder and head of product at Carets, a minimal dress shoe company.
Hey, Mountain, thank you for joining us on La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We're excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here.
So you don't live in Vegas, but you have been to Vegas before. So tell us what your favorite thing to do in Vegas.
Oh, for sure. Like growing up in Southern California, they say that culturally, Southern California is more similar to Vegas than Northern California. And Northern California is more of that like Portland, Seattle vibe. So yeah, I've always felt a strong affinity towards Vegas. And I would say the best thing about Vegas are like the mega clubs. Like they just don't make them like that anywhere else. And like the production and the size of those things and how everybody's just there to have a great time. I really love the nightclub scene in Vegas. And they also have like the day parties, the pool parties. It's just something you don't really find elsewhere. And that's coming from Los Angeles, which is known to be a great party town, you know?
What was your favorite club?
I would say it's XS. And that's because they have that outdoor area where you have room to dance, you can get some fresh air, and I really appreciate that part.
Very good. Have you been outside of the Strip in general? Have you done much exploring?
Outside of the Strip, I really like the California Hotel and how they have this oxtail soup that they only serve between like 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., something like that. And it's so hearty and delicious.
That's funny. That's my family talks about that oxtail soup often. Like that's the main thing that they like talk about. So these are all like people middle age and they're like, oh, you guys gonna stay up late at 11 p.m. and go to this place? And that's like usually what the goal is when they come and visit in Vegas.
Yeah, I guess I'm middle aged.
No, I think it's just if it's a gem, it's a gem. Like, you know, it's like if something is good, there's people know about it, but not everybody knows that that's a thing, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You probably go after the nightclub then, huh?
Exactly.
That's your go-to. You're instead of going to get tacos or pizza or something, it's like I'm gonna get some oxtail soup.
Mm-hmm.
Probably better than Taco Bell at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, all that bone broth is so healing for you, you know?
That's right. It's probably medicinal at like 3 a.m. So that's good.
Yeah.
So what is it that you do?
I am the founder and head of product for Carets, the world's best looking barefoot dress shoe.
And how did you get into that? What made you decide I need to make a dress shoe?
So I was in my first job out of college, I was a corporate accountant and I had to look a certain part for the job. But at the same time, you know, I've always been into health and fitness, but having started my career, having finished school, I had more time to dedicate to it. And I got really into the concept of barefoot running. And with that, I realized that the dress shoes I had to wear for work, they were not only uncomfortable, but they were also compromising my athletic performance and my long-term health. So I just decided I had to make my own.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed is, so you've sent us some shoes and let us try them on and experiment with them. Before, I used to hate trying on dress shoes because they were never comfortable. I never knew what size I was supposed to be. I'm like, is there supposed to be like 4 inches in front of your toes where you feel like you're wearing clown shoes? And then if I did get one that it felt like it was pretty close to fitting, I felt like it would jam my toes together. And we're used to wearing shoes, you know, CrossFit style shoes and other things where you can actually spread your toes out. So when you sent me those shoes and I could actually move my toes in the shoe and it was a dress shoe, that was like mind blowing to me that actually exists as a thing now. So definitely appreciate you looking at that for part of the design.
Awesome. Yeah, glad you like them so much.
How has the transition been? Because you've been in business for a while, for what you know, what you knew, back then about barefoot, all things barefoot or minimalist, if you will, until now. Like what have you learned, and maybe what has changed since the inception of Carets?
Mm, Let me address something that Joe said first, and then I'll transition into Erica's question too. So when I first, so you talked about how much you appreciated the generous toe box, and so when I first started this project, what I did was I basically drew like a Venn diagram of like these are the features that make a barefoot shoe, and then these are the features that make a dress shoe. And I found that so many of these they were contradicting each other. So for the dress shoe, I noticed that a lot of the other barefoot dress shoes, they looked funny because they were lacking a heel. And the heel is something that we visually expect based on our past experience with dress shoes. But on the barefoot side, you can't have a heel. And the other thing was like dress shoes, they're known for having a sleek tip, but barefoot shoes are known for having an ample toe box. So it was a matter of how do we reconcile these things that seem like they're totally contradicting? So for the heel, what we did was we created a hollow heel. So on the outside, it looks like there is a heel, but your foot is actually down inside the shoe. And for the toe box, we're fortunate that, in the history of dress shoes, they have that ample space in the front. So we were able to keep that tip very sleek, but then redraw the lines so we give you more space in the toe box. And that way you get the best of both worlds. Now, to Erica's question about what's shifted since the very beginning, I would say I was very much like a hardcore barefooter, like a barefoot zealot. I just wanted to be in as little footwear as possible. So one thing that was not in version 1 of our shoes was any sort of cushioning. It was just like the board for the insole, and then right on top of the outsole. And it was thanks to the feedback by the founder of Lems. He tried on our shoes and he said like, hey, this is pretty good, but I think you could use a bit of a softer ride on the bottom. And you don't need to do like an inch of foamy EVA marshmallow cushion. Just use something more sensible. And when I spoke with my factory about it, they're like, oh, I know exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for something like Poron. And this is a higher density, higher durability material than EVA is. So it's a closed cell material, so it doesn't degrade as quickly over time, and it still provides like just the right amount of cushioning. Because if we're talking about going barefoot on most natural surfaces, there is a little bit of give to it, and basically we're taking that and simulating it within your shoes. So that's one thing that's changed. It's the inclusion of cushioning. And in our next generation of dress shoes, we're also going to include a removable footbed, because a lot of our customers, they find that they get a lot of benefits from the barefoot features, but they still need some orthotics to support them. And by having this removable footbed, it gives people more options as far as using those custom orthotics, and also being able to customize their fit more. Like if they're wearing thinner socks, they could use the insole, or if they're going with like heavy wool for the winter, they can take out the insole and be able to fit more comfortably in there. So yeah, those are some of the things that have changed over time.
That's cool that you get the feedback of some also like fellow barefoot, minimalist type of shoes, like the owner of Lems. That's pretty awesome. But you also get the feedback from people who are wearing it in different seasons and different climates and even surfaces, which is really awesome. That's, I think, a cool feature because you can just make these improvements often, and people just like, oh man, I thought this one was awesome, and then now you get the next one and you're like, yeah, I like that. This generation, it's like, this is what I've been wanting in this, then that, and that other generation. I get pretty excited about those things when they make, when people take into a fact like, hey, I noticed like these sleeves weren't like long enough, so I really like longer sleeves to cover my wrists or something like that. And it's always cool to see the products evolve over time.
Yeah, totally, totally. Um, Getting customer feedback is a huge part of our product development process, and we send out at least one comprehensive survey every year to ask about like what styles are you guys interested in? What do you guys want us to make next? And also if we're having some internal questions about like, oh, should we do it this way or this way? Ultimately, it comes down to the customers. Customers are right about it.
And you start off with men's shoes, but you're starting to work into women's shoes as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's been a very fun journey. You know, I did have some of my personal doubts before I started the project because um, you know, the big trick that we use for the men's shoes, the hollow heel, that doesn't quite work if you're talking about like a stiletto. Like I can't fake that. I can't hollow that out and get your foot inside there. So I was worried like, am I just a one-trick pony? You know, I didn't go to school for any of this. Um, but my partner Darius, he kept saying like, dude, 30% of our web traffic is women, and we don't have women's shoes. We need to do something for them. And you know, he pushed me, and then I took a look at it, and I started surveying the landscape using the same approach that I use for men's. And I just saw like, okay, what's out there, what works, what doesn't, and how can we make this better? And as I dug into it, I found more and more things, and I was like, yeah, we have a lot to offer from like the Carets philosophy and applying that to women's shoes. And it's been really interesting to learn about how women's feet are different. For example, men's feet tend to be a little bit more boxy, like the back of your foot is about the same as the front of your foot. But for women, they tend to have a narrower heel and a wider toe spread, so it's more of like a triangle. And so you need to adjust the last, which makes up the shape of the shoe accordingly. And they also have higher arches, things like that. And even from a functional aesthetic point of view, the men's shoes, they want to emphasize like the length of it. And it's kind of phallic. I understand, like, you know, you want like to make everything look bigger than it actually is. And for the women, it's the exact opposite. You want the shoes to accentuate how tiny their feet are. And so it's a fun game. Yeah, playing with those things.
And Erica's been saying for a long time that they don't really have women's shoes that she would look for. So I think that you're definitely onto something there. She was real excited when she found out that you were making something that was really addressing the concerns that she had.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Erica, for comprehensively testing these out and giving me great feedback about it.
Oh yeah, that was so fun. And you know, speaking to some of the points that you talked about, it's very true what we tend to look for. I mean, I remember going shopping with my mom and my sister. We would spend hours just looking at, you know, different types of shoes. Like you go, like when we go to Macy's or Nordstrom or something, and going through that whole process of like, all right, everything you mentioned, you know, it's like, oh, I wanted to make my feet look, my feet look really big and on this. And that's a totally true statement. When I go shopping with even my friends, they're like, oh, it makes my feet look big. But it's the same principles that typically come up in conversation. Is like, yes, like nobody, no female wants their feet to look big, and they always want to have a smaller size. Because I talk to people sometimes, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm 5'5", and I wear a size 12 foot or 12 shoe," and they're like, "Man, my feet are so big," which is relatively a larger ratio. But um, one thing too, I was going to ask you is, you had come from a like econ or like accounting background, so now you're into making shoes. So what was that learning curve of learning about, you know, when you talk about products, and number two is just learning how to make a shoe? What was that process like?
Oh, yeah, good question. Um, I think at first I did it somewhat reluctantly out of necessity. Um, I before starting this company, I was not a stylish person. In fact, I was just like super practical to the point of being socially impractical. So one example is in the genesis of this company, there was, my company had casual Fridays. So I thought, what's more casual than Vibram Five Fingers? So I wore those into the office on a casual Friday, and my coworkers, like one person just kind of screamed when she saw me. She's like, "Oh my God, I thought you were barefoot in the office." And I was just like, "Oh gosh, like that's not really the impression I want to leave as an accountant, you know?" And I used to joke that I started a dress shoe company, so I never have to wear dress shoes again. And that was me at first. And when I left that job, like I was just wearing cargo pants all the time because what's more practical than cargo pants? And what it really started to shift when I picked up, when I started looking at the Real Men, Real Style blog run by Antonio Centeno. And I started to see that there's history behind all these styles. And I've always been a history nerd. Um, and when I started to learn, like, oh, these features have a function to them, and this is how they've evolved over time. And yeah, when I really just dove down into the details, that's when it got really interesting for me. And that's when I really stepped into being a shoe designer who can make something not just passable, because that was the original goal. I just wanted something that looked good enough that people would leave me alone. And now the goal is like, I want to make something truly beautiful that by you wearing it, you'll get compliments on them. So it's like, it's been an incredibly different reframe. And as far as it being different from accounting, it is pretty different. And I would say I'm drawing more from my interest in history. But actually, there is a similarity in that with accounting, what I enjoy the most is creating better systems. And with shoe design, it's more of a problem-solving thing for me than it is artistic expression. So yeah, I like to approach shoe design from a problem-solving um, benefits sort of way.
Can you give us an example of some of the historical context on the shoe? Like I don't know, maybe a heel or like a different, like a wingtip or something? Or can you give us an example of how that historical context is shown in a shoe?
Yeah, the wingtips are really interesting. They have like those holes all over them.
Mm.
And in most modern dress shoes, those holes are covered. They're just in the top layer, and then what's underneath the holes is just another layer of leather. But in the original iteration, those holes were open. And the reasoning for that is because these shoes were made for traversing the swampy boglands of Scotland. And I think somebody referred to these like, oh, they're the original Crocs because of all the holes, and you're supposed to like wear them with water. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that I found very fascinating.
They look better than Crocs though, so that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see just like how much goes into shoes since we've had several conversations about them. Like to this point, I would do my best to spend the least amount of time in a shoe store that I ever could. And most of my knowledge about shoes, and especially women's shoes, came from Married with Children, listening to Al Bundy talk about shoes. So that was my main idea of what shoes were in shoe stores.
Had you always had an affinity for shoes, or this has evolved since you were like, this is the practical thing I'm going to work on?
Yeah, it became the practical thing I'm gonna work on. Yeah. Before it was just like, I don't know, I probably had like two shoes in rotation at any point. And I didn't differentiate between like athletic and casual shoes because I was just super practical about it all.
At this point now, how is that? Like, what is your shoe collection now? Is it just mostly like all your dress shoes, or what's in your closet now?
Oh, if it's like everyday wear, I'm most likely testing a prototype of some sort, whether it's my own or another company's. Um, and for everything else, like let's say going hiking or going to festivals, I wear Tabi shoes. I really like those ninja style shoes. Yeah.
What's it like working with other shoe companies? Because I feel like there are a select amount of shoes brands that are working on minimalist or barefoot or zero drop or whatever you want to call it. What is it like working with other companies like that?
Let's see. We've done some giveaways with them, and we've also just exchanged emails and had conversations about, what works, what doesn't. Um, yeah, it's really nice to have those peers to work with. But as far as like a collaboration, I don't think we haven't done any like co-branded products or anything like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like it's always fun to talk about what's working and what's not working for things. Is there a particular thing that you're like, man, we've tried this and it definitely did not work, or vice versa?
Hmm. Anything that was just like an epic failure? Uh, oh, yes, I can think of one. I can think of one. So when I started this company, I started in 2010 and I started marketing it a bit more in 2012. And that was when Tough Mudder was blowing up. And there was like this sort of, and I was getting into like primal paleo. So there was like this, like, roar, I'm primal, raw, like badass sort of marketing, you know? And so as an April Fool's joke, but also kind of to test the waters, I wanted to make our tagline dress shoes that don't fuck around. And we got so much backlash from that from a couple of very vocal customers. And I was like, okay, I think our audience is a bit more conservative than I realized. Um, and so yeah, I pulled that one back.
So as far as for like, take us through the whole process of like conceptually thinking about something to design to production to testing. Like, how does all of that work? Like, how do you make that happen?
Mm. So, one of my inspirations for starting this company was reading The 4 Hour Work Week. And in that book, he talked about how there's a lot of experts online that you can find, virtual assistants. And so I remember at that time, I was like, okay, I don't know anything about sourcing. So why don't I hire somebody to do this? And so I contracted with a company and they said, okay, we could do this in 20 hours and I'll get back to you in a week. And then like a week turned into a month and a month turned into 2 months. And eventually I was just like, hey, stop working and just send me what you got. And oh, it was a mess. Like I called one company and they're like, yeah, we only make custom shoes where we scan your foot and it costs like thousands of dollars. And then another company said like, I was trying to tell your agent that we only make the back of the shoe. And somebody else was like, yeah, we're a shoe repair shop. We don't make shoes. And it was just like, whoa, this guy he did not do a good job. And I ended up just Googling, I think, shoe manufacturer, and I started calling places. And the place that I eventually found, they said, hey, we're going to Vegas to this trade show. Do you want to meet us there? And I sent them an NDA. They signed it, and I told them the idea, and it just started coming together from there. They have their own in-house designer who I spoke to and communicated the idea to, and yeah, from there they just brought it to life.
So you didn't have to like go and physically like go get some glue gun and like go and put these things together. Like you just basically, hey, this is the concept I'm looking for, and they basically produce something that prototype in a sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a smart way to do it, because I would know nothing and be like, all right, well, what am I going to start with? I don't know what material to use and all that stuff. I love it.
So do you like send them some kind of sketch or something to tell them what it is, or do they have different options that you can pick from, or how do you actually go about designing what the shoe's going to look like?
I communicated that, I wanted like the hollow heel and I wanted a wide toe box and then like with a sleek tip. And they have a lot of their existing models that at the time I didn't know any better. I thought like, okay, this looks great. Let's just do something very similar to what you have right now. And then as I learned more about dress shoes, I started bringing references from other companies, other dress shoe companies that I know to be very fancy, very respected, and started integrating their details into our shoes. But yeah, from the start, it was a lot of like just take what you guys are already making and then make a couple tweaks to them in order to fit my audience. And of course, it's definitely evolved a lot from there, but that's where we started from.
So if you have feedback from shoes, like you're talking about earlier, how you listen to what people say after they try them on, and Erica's tried on some of your prototypes. So do you just tell them based on whatever her feedback is, and they can just do little tweaks and redesigns at will and then produce another shoe after that?
Not at will. Factories much prefer that I give them exact, like to the millimeter, adjust here and adjust here. Yeah.
Can they make like a single pair of shoes like that, or do you have to order like a minimum quantity of 50 or something like that?
When we're talking about samples during the development process, we can order just one at a time. And yeah, we wouldn't do like a big batch until at least we get the size, we get the shape of the shoe down, and then we'll expand that shape across all of our size range. For men's, that's like 7 through 14. For women's, it'll be 5 through 11. And then we start testing that out with people with smaller and bigger feet and just seeing whether our size run is accurate.
That's interesting too about different sizes for different companies. Like for example, you might use a Nike dress or a Nike athletic shoe is different to, a woman's like heel or something. How does that work with like different variations in sizing?
Yeah, sizing can get pretty complicated and frustrating because even within the same brand, like you can find some variation in sizing too, And I think it just comes down to the fact that our feet are not just one measure. They have a whole geography to them, and the left and the right are not totally the same either. So yeah, I wish there was a way for us to just standardize it all and get rid of all the confusion, but yeah, that is how it is right now, and I don't know how to make it better. Sorry.
No, it's good. I like the feedback because I think that's something that probably it's a system that just like each little model and every tweak that you make is going to change how things fit, how things rub, and where your midfoot or your heel hits the back of the shoe or something like that.
Yeah. And even using the same exact model shoe, if you change the material, that can also change how the shoe fits. Like if you go from a stretchy mesh to like a stiff leather, then yeah, like you might have to go one size down for that or one size up.
So what's something that you commonly see in your business but you wish people knew sooner?
What's something that I commonly see in my business that I wish people knew sooner? Can you help me out with an example from your business?
So for us, like prevention's a pretty big deal. So if people spend time looking at what they're doing throughout the day, both posturally and positionally, it can alleviate a lot of wear and tear on things going forward. So they, make small decisions. A lot of times it ends to bigger gains and they don't really even realize that that's a thing.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be from your business. It could just be your life too.
Yeah, or life.
Yeah. From the business, I would say the proper use of shoe trees is very important. So yeah, the shoe trees are like these wooden things that are shaped similar to your shoes, and then you slip them inside the shoe and it smooths out the wrinkles and it keeps the front of the shoe from curling up. And if you don't use shoe trees, it'll keep curling up and it'll get uncomfortable and it won't look as good and it won't last as long. So shoe trees are super important. And they only need to be in the shoe for the 24 hours that you after you wear them. And then after that, you could take them out and use them in another pair of shoes. But those 24 hours are critical.
I had no idea. I didn't even know what those were for.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Definitely a good pro tip for the listeners.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my dad had shoe trees growing up, and I was just like, oh, I used them as sharks. Like that's what I played. I like played. I was like, these are sharks. Like that's what I thought they were.
Yeah, they do look like sharks. The big shark head, and then like the back is kind of like their dorsal. Or yeah, the fins.
Yep, that's all I thought they were. So that's a nice tip. How about like what about leather treatment? You know how people, you generally like treat your leather and stuff. What would be your recommendation for that?
Oh yeah. So it depends on what kind of climate you live in. If you're, if you're walking in the rain pretty frequently with them, you'll want to clean and condition them more often. For myself, living in California where it doesn't rain quite as much, the way I like to take care of my shoes is I get them shined before an important event, professionally shined. And I watched a lot of videos and I've done a lot of shoe shining myself, but it's never quite the same as when I take it into like my local cobbler and they do it. Like there's just like this mirror gloss to it that I can't achieve on my own. So with that, they'll typically clean your shoes and then they'll apply conditioner on them, which is like lotion for the shoes, because leather is skin. And then after that, they polish them, and the polish is made of wax, actually, like candle wax. Um, and this creates a barrier on the outside of the shoe, which protects it. So it's not just to make your shoes look good. It also offers protection. It's like a waxy shell.
What about a suede? Like something? Would you take care of a suede type of shoe?
Oh, suede. We haven't produced anything in suede yet. We will, but not yet. So I don't have quite as much experience with that. I have heard that you can spray it with something like a Scotch Guard to
Mm.
protect it. Yeah, but don't quote me on that. I don't know that much about suede yet.
Oh, no worries. I figured I ask you.
Cool.
What is something that you've learned more recently that you wish you knew sooner?
Something I learned recently that I wish I knew sooner. Hmm. Hmm. As far as shoe design or business,
Or life, anything.
Anything, whatever comes to your
oh,
head.
um, yeah, I have been working on my flexibility more, and something that I realized, I think it was just from watching some Instagram videos, was that uh, you can stretch harder than you think you can. And I think, I just thought like, oh, I have to really take it steady, but no, you can push it like any other exercise. So that's helped accelerate my flexibility gains.
So what are the goals with the flexibility? Like, are you looking for better like athletic performance? Are you trying to not have tight hips as you sit down? Like what's your goal?
The goal is to create cooler pictures when I'm dancing. So if I have more flexibility, I can like, yeah, just make better visuals that way.
Very good.
And
That's
of
probably
course,
the best answer to that question for stretching that I've ever heard.
I love it. What's something that you're working on, and this can be for anything, and you talked about physically, but professionally or personally, mentally, that you're excited about? Something that you're working on right now that you're excited about.
oh, I'm most excited for these new products that we're working on. So there's two lines for women. One will be more like dress shoes, Oxfords, boots. So it'll have the same hollow heel concept as our men's dress shoes. And there's also another line which is more like flats and pumps. So less of like an upper covering and more of like a flat bottom. We're also working on casual sneakers and the next generation of men's shoes, which if you look at our current collection, it's a very American slash British style of silhouette and a little bit of chunkiness to it. And the new direction we're going with the next generation is more Italian. So everything looks more sleek. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I would say that there's more universal preference for the Italian style. Yeah.
Why would you say that, or what is it that is a universal style for like the Italian? Is it just? I guess why are people more inclined to that type of style?
Why are they more inclined to that style? I'm not sure. It it's sleeker, I guess. It's kind of like, yeah, I guess it would be kind of like Italian sports cars versus British or American sports cars.
Hmm.
Huh.
That's a good,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's a
you know,
good,
like
I could see that.
American muscle cars, and like,
Yeah.
they're really boxy, and the ones that are Italian are just like very low to the ground, and everything's really sleek and tight. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, ours aren't. Our shoes won't be tight for your toes. So.
Right.
And that's actually it's a really good analogy because I'm looking at like all those types of sports cars. I'm like, yeah, totally. It's the difference of like the I guess American sports cars like are really about the horsepower and like the beastiness of it, I guess you will, right? The brute force type of thing, and Italian's like very unique and it has like a unique design. How would you describe an Italian race car?
I don't know, expensive.
But I get what you
Yeah,
mean.
they'll look more expensive. Yeah, and as a result, elevate your social status and all that jazz. Yeah.
Excellent.
I like it.
So, what is your favorite cheat meal?
My favorite cheat meal. I really like ice cream. I'm a bit of an ice cream snob. And one of my friends asked me, like, what does ice cream snob mean? Like Ben and Jerry's and up? And I was like, that's exactly it. Yeah, Ben and Jerry's and up. So frozen yogurt, gelato. Just I like frozen sweets, I guess.
Very good. Any favorite flavors for Ben and Jerry's?
Yeah, Americone Dream, the Stephen Colbert flavor.
Oh, I didn't even know he had a flavor of ice cream.
Yeah, it's a vanilla ice cream, and there's swirls of chocolate dipped waffle cones in there.
Okay.
I like it. So what do you have just a bunch of ice cream in your freezer or do you like only consume it when you're like I want ice cream?
I have it in my freezer, and I have like one serving a day. I prefer it this way versus like dedicated cheat days. And I remember when I used to do cheat day, but like a singular cheat day during a week, but it would always spill over. Like I couldn't get back on the horse like the next day. So I find it better to just like have smaller doses of cheats.
I like it.
Mhm.
Is that after dinner or is this like after lunch? Like what's your ideal ice cream time?
After dinner, yeah.
I like it.
Well, we definitely appreciate you coming on and giving us your time and talking about your shoes. I think they're awesome. I think what you're doing is really creative. I think it's very useful and necessary for people. And so how can our listeners find you?
www.carets.com. And you'll also find us on Instagram at carets_shoes. And carets is spelled Carets. Oh, can I talk about the name?
Yes,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear it.
So a caret spelled Carets is shift 6 on your keyboard. And it's like the little hat sign.
Mhm.
So I really love this name because it's the exponent sign. It's like to the power of. And our shoes are all about enhancing you, the wearer, enhancing your career and enhancing your health. So it's like to the power of you. And caret also happens to be a homonym for 3 things: the quality of gold, the weight of a diamond, and also just like this universally healthy food, like whether you're paleo or vegan, like carets are awesome. And we are the intersection of luxury and health. So carets.
That's an intelligent name for the shoe. I had no idea. Well, once again, we really appreciate your time. It was awesome talking with you, and we look forward to seeing what you come up with next.
All right, thanks guys.
Thanks, Mountain.
Thanks. We'd like to thank you for listening to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the time with our guests as much as we did. It would help us out so much if you could share, subscribe, or review our podcast or any combination of the 3. Thanks again, and remember to take care of yourself.